our pleasure to welcome in for the second straight week in what will now be his usual slot. We had him on earlier in the week last week because I was going to be in Dallas on Friday. But John Parker Wilson, number 14, former Alabama Crimson Tide quarterback, and of course former Hoover Buck star as well, is going to be in this slot on most Fridays, presented by the WHMZ Group at Morgan Stanley, with locations in Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, and Atlanta. Call for more information, 344-8443. That's 205-344-8443. The WHMZ Group at Morgan Stanley has the size and scale to deliver a full range of investment services to their clients, including financial services, wealth transfer, and charitable giving. They'll work with you and for you. And you know what the best thing about it is? You'll always be in the loop. They'll keep you up to date on a daily and weekly basis on what's going on with your money. And John Parker Wilson now joins us courtesy of the WHMZ Group at Morgan Stanley. Good morning, JPW.
Gary, how are you doing, man?
Doing great. Let's talk some football, brother. Last week, I don't think any of us really knew what to expect. You had an idea on how you thought it might play out with the quarterbacks, but I'm wondering, as a former quarterback, I was sitting in the press box. I wonder if you were like me. After what I saw in that first quarter, I was just thinking, heck, man, make a first down. I mean, Barnett comes out there. He seemed to have a little bit of the deer in the headlights look. They come with Hurts. Read option first play looked like it was going to go for a huge gainer, but he can't get it out of Harris's belly. They fumble the ball, turn it over. You know, it's easy to look back now at 52-6, but midway through the second quarter, it was 3-0 at USC. What were you thinking at that point when both of those young quarterbacks seemed to really be struggling?
Yeah, you know, there's nothing worse than starting off the game or starting off the first quarter going 3 and outs. It's tough as an offense. It's tough to get any momentum going, and all you're trying to do is get that first down and get the ball rolling and get some completions. But, you know, it's quick. It's very easy for us to forget that these guys are still freshmen.
That's
I mean,
right.
There was definitely nerves out there, and I think Coach Saban has talked about it throughout the week. The biggest thing that impressed me, though, was 2 young guys, both had nerves early that we all saw, but shook them off really quick. They responded and came back and put some points on the board and moved the ball. So to be expected, they have some nerves, but I think the biggest thing was they just knocked it off and kept on going. And then the team, I think, really rallied behind them.
No doubt about it. And you look at Hurts, I mean, he had that first play, which I think was going to go for a big gain. Whether or not he would have scored or not, we don't know. But he comes back in, he settles down, he hit a big third down pass to Ridley on the sideline, and then, of course, the rollout to the right. Stewart gets behind the defense, and he made it look easy. 39 yards on the scorebook, but I think about 55 yards in the air. But you've played the position. Just because a guy's open doesn't mean it's easy, especially for a true freshman quarterback. But he flicked that wrist, and that was a beautiful throw. And after that, it was pretty much on, wasn't it, John Parker?
Yeah, and the best thing about that first touchdown pass was he was going through his reads on the run. So it was a high-low combination. He read the safety great. You know, the receiver was out of the bounds when he let the ball go. So just showing his arm strength on that play, throw it at 55 yards, and like you said, he made it look easy. He made it look like he's done it a million times before. Really liked what Lane Kiffin was doing with the offense, moving the pocket like that, getting him on the run, getting him comfortable, not letting the defensive line get a solid rush on him, I think, which definitely helps. But, you know, going through those reads as a young guy especially, you read it high, so you read the go ball first, and then you read the safety, and you read it down the field. And if not, you always get the chance to run it. So it takes a little bit of pressure off the plate, lets them kind of ease into the game. And I think as the season goes on, we'll see more elaborate offenses, but I thought it was a great game plan by Lane Kiffin to start off the season.
Hurts ran for 2, threw for 2. He became the first quarterback in 30 years to have multiple rushing and passing touchdowns against USC in the same game. Barnett, as we said, got the start, struggled early, but he came back in the second half, John Parker, and I know it was 38-3 when he came in. It's probably a little more relaxing scenario to play quarterback when you've got a big league like that, but still you got to make the plays. I thought the slant he threw to Cam Sims was a bullet. Then he hit O.J. Howard down the middle on a beautiful throw, and then the touchdown to Dieter, he never broke stride. So he got back in, built some confidence, and that's got to be big for him.
Yeah, definitely. And it's easy for us to say, and I said the same thing, you know, he got the lead, it's easy. But those guys, there's still a lot on the line. I mean, they're still battling for a job, so it's high pressure for those guys also. But once he came back and settled down, yeah, he was throwing some strikes. finished 5 for 6 with 100 yards, and really showed a lot of poise when he came back in the game. And he redshirted last year, so he hasn't seen live game action in over a year, since high school. So I think that's easy also to forget. But these are things. I mean, it's a great, great learning opportunity, especially when you win. A lot of times we come out and you lose a game, and we always talk about how much you can learn in a loss. Well, you can learn a lot in this situation too with these young guys. Go back and I know Kiffin and the rest of the staff are getting with these guys saying, okay, here's what you did good, here's what you did bad, and here's how we're going to work on it. And it's kind of nice to have two guys that are in the same boat together. So two freshmen trying to go out there and figure it out. I was really impressed with both of them over the weekend.
We're visiting with former Alabama and NFL quarterback John Parker Wilson, presented by the WHMZ Group in Tuscaloosa and Morgan Stanley. And John Parker actually works for that organization. So if you want to discuss financial planning with John Parker or any of the other great qualified professionals at the WHMZ Group, you can give them a call at 205-344-8443. That's 205-344-8443. All right, going forward now, John Parker, you look at this Alabama team, two young quarterbacks that are both incredibly talented. You've got a third-string quarterback who's a veteran guy that has some presence on the field. If things get shaky, you could always also look at Cooper Bateman as a possibility. But for this game tomorrow, it looks like, according to Saban this week, that he's going to play two guys again. And it looks like it's going to be Barnett and Hurts. We don't know who will start. He has not said. But there's so much discussion when you're playing two quarterbacks. How long will they stay with it? What will be the plan? But I'm kind of with Saban, and I want to get your thoughts. A lot of people say, well, it's a good problem to have, but really it's not a problem. You got two young quarterbacks that are talented. They're still evaluating both of them. Do you have any issue with playing two tomorrow?
No, and like you said, it's definitely not a problem. Most of the times when people are talking about, well, which quarterback do we play, they're trying to pick the lesser of the two bad guys. Well, I mean, we got two guys that have gone out and that can show they can get it done. And, I think at this point, even if we do know who the starter is, there's no sense in telling Ole Miss who our guy is going to be. There's no sense in letting them prepare because, as a defensive coordinator, preparing for two quarterbacks, I mean, you're basically having to put two game plan in for one team. It's difficult. You got to go through different motions and formations and different sets, different plays that these guys are going to specialize in. So there's no sense in naming who the guy is going to be the rest of the year. And even if they, they probably haven't figured out, and even if they did, they'll probably will be figured out for the Ole Miss game. I think this game is about going out and getting polished, practicing, and going, getting better with a good opponent in Western Kentucky. And there's a chance that we're going to have to put some points on offense to keep up with, Western Kentucky's high-powered offense.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to get to the Hilltoppers in just a little bit. As a quarterback, you're responsible for all areas of the offense and watching them. And I know through a quarterback's eyes, you weren't just watching Barnett and Hurts. You were watching the offensive line. You were watching the backs. You were watching the receivers run their routes. Let's talk about Damian Harris and the vision that I thought he showed once he got comfortable. Now, he got run down by Dory Jackson, but a lot of people are going to get run down by that cat as a world-class sprinter. But the vision he showed, the cutback ability, I got to tell you, John Parker, it reminded me of a guy that you played with in 2008 as freshman, Mark Ingram. He had a lot of Mark Ingram in him the other night, I thought. He
really did, and it kind of even looks like him a little bit. I thought he had a great game. I think those big explosive plays that he had, that's what changes ball games, is when you can get big explosive plays in the run game to change the field. It completely changes the momentum. The offensive line know it. They feel it. And that just gives them, even more confidence to go out there and face the defensive line. When that running back is scooped downfield, a lot of times you aren't looking, but the offensive linemen are so excited. I mean, it's like they're running those big plays. And he did. His vision was very nice to see. Getting hit at the line of scrimmage and then busting it for a few more. I thought he did really good. I liked how, he got 9 carries, Scarborough got 11. They kind of went with a two-back system. Nothing wrong with that either. Get some guys back there. We got to give them some experience, some playing experience especially.
And at the receiver position, we know that this is a good group. There's speed, there's size, there's depth. And no doubt Southern Cal was going to shade their coverage toward Ridley, but that's the problem you have when you play Alabama. You try to take Ridley away, and you got a big play guy in Ardarius Stewart. Gary Dieter showed what he's capable of there with that 45-yard touchdown reception. We didn't see too much of Foster, but Cam Sims flashed. Unfortunately, hurt his shoulder. What a luxury for young quarterbacks to have a veteran group of proven receivers, not to mention O.J. Howard, with a lot of different options to throw the football to.
Yeah, so you just said it. We've got depth. If you want to take away one guy, there's 2 or 3 more guys that are just as good, if not as good, as the other guy. I think that's what makes it our receiving corps so powerful. Is our Darius Stewart can cover the other side if they're going to double Calvin Ridley, and then by the way, O.J. Howard is like another wide receiver out there also who's going to be bigger than everybody. I think as a young quarterback, you've got these guys that have gone out there and they've played. They understand that with a freshman, you might have to get a couple extra inches of separation for him to be able to fit it in there. You're going to have to help him out a little bit. And having veteran guys out there, it's a security blanket for these young quarterbacks. You need it. And I know Coach Saban's excited to have those guys that have gone and played, who've been in these big situations, who can look on the sidelines and the quarterback's got no worries if this receiver's going to run the right route or is he going to see the hot route. We saw the long touchdown to Darius Stewart was actually a read by both the quarterback and the receiver. They had a secondary blitz. The free safety came. The cornerback came. Well, as soon as that happens, the receiver has to change his route to a new route, to a hot route. The quarterback has to see it. Obviously, they both saw it, and it happened in a long touchdown. So that's the chemistry you need from those veteran receivers.
Now to the group that I bet put the biggest smile on your face before the night was done, the offensive line. Some young guys in there. You got a true freshman, Jonah Williams, at right tackle. You got Pierce Baker moving from left guard to right guard, Bozeman at center, Lester Cotton at left guard, and, of course, the veteran there, Cam Robinson, at left tackle. They seemed to start slow. Of course, USC was jacked up on defense, had a lot of energy, made some plays early. But as that game went on, the thing that impressed me was, first of all, the athleticism of that offensive line. A lot of combination blocks, Cotton's ability to pull out and get in front of people. By the end, USC's defensive front and linebackers were pretty much saying no mas. What a great performance by a young offensive line. And if they continue to get better, John Parker, how good does this group have the potential to be? And they didn't have Shank Taylor, but I was really impressed with that young offensive line on Saturday.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I mean, USC's got some talent. Let's be honest. They've got good defensive line. They've got just as good as recruiting class as anybody else in the country. But our offensive line, as young as they are and haven't played, and now we got Pierce Bucker playing new position and Jonah over there, a freshman guy, they played really well together. And I think it's just the athleticism. Cam looked good. He lost a bunch of weight. And you can tell. These guys settled in, and once they got going, they just put a beating on the defensive line. And there's no better feeling of just whipping somebody up front. And I think that's what we did. Like you said, USC wanted to be out of the building by the end of the game, and it's because they were getting whipped up front. Now, things will get better as the season goes with those combination blocks, with whether it's the tight end work, O.J. working with Jonah over there on the right side, or he's got to work with a guard and changing out the different plays and the different calls. That'll come, and that comes with practice, and that comes with reps. But just on athleticism, I think they are extremely athletic up front. Those big guys did a really good job against a talented USC defense.
John Parker Wilson analyzes Alabama football for us every Friday here on the Gary Harris Show, and he can also help analyze your financial situation as a member of the WHMZ group in Tuscaloosa at Morgan Stanley. They've got a team of 20 experts who will work together to simplify and streamline their clients' financial lives. When we come back, we are going to talk about that Bama D. John Parker's a quarterback, but I'm going to ask him how he would try to attack that Bama defense because USC did not have a lot of luck. We'll get to the Western Kentucky game, look ahead to that, and we'll go around the SEC a little bit, and I'll talk to John Parker about a quarterback who still doesn't seem to get it, and I wonder how much his coaching staff is helping him get it, and that's Brandon Harris at LSU. Our discussion with John Parker Wilson will continue, brought to you by the WHMZ Group at Morgan Stanley, right after this on the Gary Harris Show on Tide 102.9 FM and 102.9.com. We're going to get to the Hilltoppers with John Parker Wilson in just a moment, but first, John Parker, I want to ask you about the Alabama defense. I mean, USC had a little success in the first quarter, as you might expect. Each team filling each other out. Max Brown started 7 for 7, had a play where he ran it up the middle on a nice scramble. But after that first quarter, that Alabama defense just absolutely dominated. And the thing I was impressed with was they were able to rush the passer and take away the run without having to walk the safeties up, put extra guys in the box, so then they could play the 2 split safeties over the top. I mean, as a quarterback, you're Max Brown sitting back there. That's got to be a nightmare, man.
Nightmare's right, because you typically stop the run with a safety in the box. So if you think they're going to run it, you put a safety in the box, and you've only got 3 deep guys. That's when you want to throw it. And when you can drop 2 safeties and still stop the run with the front 7 with the defensive line and the linebackers, it becomes extremely difficult to throw the ball. They've got a lot more guys in coverage. They're covering up the zones when they're in zone coverage. And it makes it difficult. It really does. And as a quarterback, you got to find different ways to get it done. And then that's when you start forcing the balls, and that's when you start throwing interceptions, is when you start forcing it. And I think that's what we saw from USC last weekend.
When you look at this defense and you see the speed, you see the athleticism, yet they're still big enough up front, as we saw, to contain the run. If you're a quarterback, I mean, and an offensive coordinator on the other side, I mean, what are you trying to do? Do you see any areas that you could try to attack? I mean, after one game, and again, you see it differently than I do, but did you see anything where Alabama needs to work on defense or any potential problem areas, or did they look to you as good as they look to me?
Yeah, I thought they looked really good, especially when you only give up 6 points. I mean, you could obviously always say there's stuff to work on, but, man, they really did look strong. And I think, like you said, it's the speed. I mean, so Coach Saban has kind of changed his defense, changed the personnel from these big guys. You see Reuben Foster losing some weight, looking good, looking like a different player, looking like he really understands playing the linebacker position. You know, before where he might just been like a bull in the china shop, tackling everything and hitting everybody. He's playing the position. He's being the quarterback there on the defense that you love to see. You know, from like a Reggie Ragland or Rolando McClain, he's just filling that new role. And the ways to stop it, I mean, I think you got to do some unorthodox things. You got to throw it quick. You got to try to get the ball out of your hands, because you know those guys are going to be breathing down your neck. Screens, some different mesh in between to try to break some guys free. I don't think you're going to be able to take shots deep too much, just because of, like we talked about earlier, the 2 safeties deep. You got to try to do different things and beat them on the outside, because I don't think you can run the ball up the middle right now.
John Parker Wilson appears courtesy of the WHMZ Group at Morgan Stanley, located in Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, and Atlanta. Call for more information, 205-344-8443. All right, John Parker, let's look ahead to tomorrow. And you've been in the shoes of these players. You come off a huge win over USC. You've got to go to Ole Miss next week. We know what's on the line in that game. And then you got Western Kentucky in here. The fans are all expecting 50-0. They hear Western Kentucky, they think Western Carolina. I mean, the fans don't designate much between this. They think of them as an inferior opponent. Yet this is a team that went 12-2 last year, won the Conference USA regular season championship, won a bowl game, finished in the top 25. They're 3-3 their last 6 games against the SEC. Yes, they lost Dowdy, their quarterback, to the Dolphins, but they bring in a transfer, Mike White from South Florida. All he does is throw for 500 yards. How difficult a job is it for Nick Saban when you're playing a team that you know as a coaching staff is better than what they're going to be given credit for? How do you convince the players, hey, we got to show up and prepare for this game just like we would Ole Miss or Auburn or anybody else?
Well, I mean, the stats that you just went through and said, I mean, how could you not give a team like that respect no matter what direction is on before their name of their school? I mean, this team's talented. They threw over 500 yards last week, and I don't care if you're going out there in the parking lot throwing on air. Putting up 500 yards of offense is something special. That's getting it done. And, you know, I think from what we saw, if nothing else, from what we saw last week against Mississippi State and South Alabama, that should be a wake-up call right there that it can happen. It can happen at home. It can happen on the road. It can happen anywhere. You can't be complacent. You can't say, hey, we're Alabama. We're going to just show up and play. And, you know, I don't think that, from what we've seen over the past years, that's not a Nick Saban team. They're not going to just say, okay, we're going to flip a switch and show up. They've been working since, you know, Saturday evening at whatever time the game was finished on getting ready for Western Kentucky, because it's the next game. And, you know, you don't think this is a big game until you lose one. I think it was Gene Stallings that said that, and you can't take an opponent like this lightly. You really cannot.
John Parker, I know we're only 1 week in, and you played on a team in 2008 that went undefeated during the regular season, 12-0, wound up losing in the SEC championship game. 2009 team completed it certainly Alabama's beatable. I mean, that's the only perfect season that Saban's had was 2009. But when you look at this team, and I guess when you analyze a game, you have to assume if both sides play their best, bring their A game. If Alabama brings their A game every week, do you think this is a team that potentially could run the table and go undefeated?
I mean, I think so. With the talent, I don't think there's any question. I mean, I think there's a lot of variables each week that go into winning a game. I mean, that's when we go out and play, and that's why teams like Appalachian State beat Michigan or South Alabama beats Mississippi State. You got to put it all together. You got to show up every Saturday, and you got to get it done. And another thing that plays into going undefeated or winning a championship is injuries. I mean, there's nothing worse than getting bit by the injury bug, and then one guy goes down, and now the backup goes. That can happen to a team, and that's where the good teams have depth. And I think Alabama does have that depth. Now, we've had some guys that transfer that depleted some of that depth, but that's what you have to do. You have to stay healthy, and you have to show up every week because it doesn't matter who you're playing. If it's Western Kentucky or Kent State or whoever, these guys are good. They're getting a scholarship for a reason, and I think that's what makes college football so fun is because anybody can win any given Saturday.
All right, we just got a couple minutes. I do want to ask you about LSU. All we heard in the offseason was how Brandon Harris had improved. The play calling was going to be different. Cam Cameron was coming out of the box, down to the sidelines, was going to make all the difference. And then against Wisconsin, it was the same old, same old. I mean, they just looked miserable. Harris looked lost. Are you surprised by how poorly LSU played on offense in that game against Wisconsin?
No, I'm not. Not at all. And I don't blame him. I mean, I think one of Coach Saban's biggest, strongest suits is he's able to adapt. He changes. He changes his offense. He changes his defense. He's always getting better. I think LSU has run the same offense for the past 10 years, and they're happy if they put up 21 points. I mean, if I'm an LSU fan, I'm just pulling my hair out because they're doing the same things year after year after year. It's the same boring offenses. They're not changing. They're relying on their defense and hoping Fournette has a good game. The past game is, prehistoric in what they're trying to do. And it doesn't matter if you bring in a new offensive coordinator or a new spread guy. If the head coach doesn't let him and give him the ability to call the plays, nothing's going to change.
Wow. All right, you've transitioned from the game of football on playing on a lot of great teams to another great team, the WHMZ group at Morgan Stanley. I know you and all the other great professionals there can help people with their financial planning, diversifying their assets. Tell folks how they can get in touch with you, John Parker.
Yeah, so we're right there in Tuscaloosa, right down the road, right across from Inn Hills. We got an office in Birmingham and an office in Atlanta also. The easiest way to get in touch with us is just give me a call at our office at 344-8443 or come by and see us. We're there each and every day. And I think the big word for this week is complacent. I think, are you complacent at home or you complacent against Western Kentucky? So it's always a time to be proactive. So come and see us and let's figure things out.
Absolutely. Join John Parker Wilson's team at the WHMZ group at Morgan Stanley, 205-344-8443. Thank you, John Parker. Talk to you again next week.
All right, man. Roll Tide.